Ang terminals at dusk, confessions by boarding time. My name is Daniel and I choreograph impatience for a living. I'm a gate supervisor at an international airport. Jet bridges, crew manifests, boarding groups that behave like weather. On paper I announce zones, process upgrades, reconcile loads against what physics allows. In practice I translate appetite. Passengers want exceptions turned into rules. Pilots want departures without explaining headwinds. Management wants metrics that look like obedience. I carry a badge that opens doors and arguments, a headset that tells fewer lies than most men, and a roll of standby stickers that cling harder than vows. I live with Jonas. He runs a print shop in a side street where paper remembers what hands were for. He comes home smelling of ink and lemon soap, and he reads me receipts from strangers as if they were tiny novels. We have a rule written on an index card and stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a boarding pass. Say it by boarding. Our earliest boarding calls most days are 06:20. We chose it after a winter when midnight honesty became theater and mornings became negotiations. Boarding time leaves no room for metaphor. The Thursday the jet bridges behaved and I didn't. The concourse was a carnival of cancellations. Whether upstream had hiccuped, a union had decided to stretch its legs, and our screens glowed red with the kind of poetry people hate. At 02:13 a wheelchair request turned into a small opera. At 03:04 a crew misconnected and swore geography was personal. At 04:39 my pocket lit with the joint email Jonas and I use for deliveries and dangerous nouns. Thank you for your stay, the horizon. Time 12:083:02. Points 200 added. Boarding time stood up in my chest and announced last call. I didn't call him. Our second rule is for everything not yet a catastrophe, 2 loops around the concourse before nomming it. I walked past sleeping bodies on carpet, past duty-free shutters promising perfume as salvation, past the lone janitor who nodded like a priest. The terminal hummed the sentence ceilings prefer. You already know. He arrived as if he'd been invited by delay itself. Vale, he said, last name first, then Carter. His lanyard called him a passenger experience consultant, which is how people invoice charm. He had been hired to improve disruption communications, which means make rage polite. He wore navy like a thesis and carried a smile that could get through customs. He leaned against my podium while I recleared a standby list and watched like it was theater. You keep chaos fluent, he said. I keep it from speaking in capitals, I said. When you close a door, he asked, do you feel it in your body? In my teeth, I said, and a little behind the eyes. He laughed softly, like a gate change whispered in the right ear. Drink after shift. The Horizon Bar forgives uniforms. Jonas texted a photo of a ream of cream cardstock stacked like a sermon. Wedding invites proof till dawn. I'll be home by 7. Say it by boarding. I sent a heart and the little airplane emoji. Then a man in a suit asked if I could personally guarantee the weather in Dallas, and I thought of the Horizon's elevator. The Horizon Bar pretends receipts are therapy. Carter sat in the corner where lamps no cheekbones. He asked what it feels like to watch 1,000 people try to leave at once and keep them believing they still could. I told him it feels like holding a door open for a tide. He touched the back of my hand with 2 fingers, testing for current. Here, he asked with his mouth. Now, I said, because every boarding call is a yes disguised as sequence. His sweet smelled like citrus and calculated silence. He kissed like a man who had been applauded for patience and was curious about speed. He pressed me against the glass, and the runway below blinked yes in Morse. He was generous where good biographies demand generosity, and selfish where a mouth remembers appetite is not always metaphor. I put my hands where agreements live. We left the lamp on because daylight had been added to the terms between lobby and lift. After, he lay on his stomach and studied the carpet like a map. "You'll forgive him," he said, meaning Jonas, meaning the man who reads invoices as novels. "I'll speak by boarding," I said. He smiled like he'd upgraded himself. Jonas was home when I came in, hands stained faintly blue, eyes steady. He poured coffee like punctuation. At 06:20 we stood under the boarding pass magnet and I gave him nouns. Hotel, elevator, mouth, hands, yes. I didn't edit. He listened like a man who has learned to count silence as a color. "Do you love him?" he asked. "I loved the hour where nobody needed my authority," I said. He nodded once, wrote under our rule with his printmaker's precision. "No rooms we can't name at this table. If anything breaks, we break it before dusk together." He underlined together and capped the pen like a verdict. Carter didn't act like a man who understood finales. He began appearing at my gates without an itinerary, drifting like fog through delays. He sent me a photo of the empty concourse at dawn with the caption "Proof." He learned 2 crew schedulers' names and spoke them like charms. He asked if our standby process could be reframed as opportunity curation. I told him nouns deserve more respect. The gossip vertical that feeds on terminals posted a grainy Horizon elevator still. My shoulder, his mouth. The caption "Supervisor confirms alternate route." Jonas didn't forward it. He printed it, taped it inside the cabinet with our good mugs, and removed it at boarding to make space for a grocery list. This is his archive. Nothing heavy where daily hands reach. Props have perfect timing. Housekeeping at the Horizon phone to say they'd found a ring beneath a chair and a sweet link to my loyalty number, narrow gold, engraved C+D inside like arithmetic pretending to be law. Not mine. The clerk asked if I wanted to claim it. "Hold for owner," I said with my gate voice, the one that turns tantrums into cues. Work tried to save me with logistics. A diverted Airbus wanted a gate that didn't exist. A family of 7 begged for an upgrade like it was a sacrament. A pilot called in sick 2 minutes after check-in. I moved planes like pawns, printed apologies like tickets, wrote incident reports that said only reaccommodated. Carter texted, "You're very good when the room is afraid." I typed, "I prefer accurate," and left it unsent. Then a little red light blinked on a kiosk where red doesn't belong. Maintenance pulled the panel and found a recorder taped under the lip, thumb-sized, patient, impolite. It had been collecting the soft part of travel, the breath before a demand, the sigh of surrender, the first draft of grief muttered into a boarding pass. The sticker on its battery belonged to a firm the consortium had hired to capture authentic passenger sentiment. Carter had name-dropped their founder over whiskey, as if it were gossip instead of prophecy. I peeled it off with a scraper, bagged it like contraband. Legal wrote a memo with "regrettable" 4 times and "consent" twice. We printed signs in font that refuses to smile, "Recording without consent prohibited." External devices by authorization only. Passengers barely looked. Staff read twice. I told Jonas by boarding. He leaned against the counter, mug in hand, and asked, "Are we being interesting or are we being us?" He asks it like a boarding call, firm, final. "Us," I said, like a gate closing on schedule. Carter tried to script an ending. He waited at security's side door with the ring between his fingers, engraving flashing. "C+D say my name," he said softly, as if syllables notarize. "Carter," I said, because facts deserve clarity. Then I added exit. His smile collapsed politely. He pocketed the ring like a receipt and told me, "You're precise." "I prefer accurate," I said, and walked back into the concourse where Dawn was already boarding. "If you came for erotics, I'll inventory only. A wall and a yes and hands where we agreed, a mouth that believed in the moment more than the man. The lamp stayed on because daylight had become part of the contract. It was heat without metaphor and the relief of a head that forgot schedules. If you came for intrigue plated, a ring with arithmetic, a recorder with ambitions taped to a kiosk, an elevator that thinks it's literature, a consultant who confused narrative with departure times. If you came for redemption, airports don't sell it. We sell clearance. The recorder became a policy that became a routine. The firm was dismissed with a paragraph about values. Security added sweeps. I wrote a note to staff. Stories belong to mouths, not machines. Jonas came home with ink on his wrist and a smile that refused drama. He pressed his palm to my throat one night, gentle, and asked, "Here." I said, "Now," because consent is better punctual than poetic. Work stayed work. A child cried when her boarding group was called too soon. I let her board anyway. A pilot winked and said, "Thanks for the slot," and I pretended not to hear the metaphor. The concourse breathed. The city departed. Sometimes at 03:00, I stand at the window by gate 12 and look at the runway's necklace of lights. The dark waits like a story we don't tell. I think of my father teaching me to tie a knot in a rope, how he said a bowline is a promise you can check with one hand. I think of the index card on our fridge and how paper needs breath. I think of a ring engraved with arithmetic and how math flatters what truth refuses. We added a line to our rule because rules like companions. In Jonas's careful hand, if you burn something, do it where I can help find water. We didn't laminate it. Paper wants lungs. The magnet holds. Carter will find another terminal to haunt, another elevator to rehearse sincerity in, another ring to engrave like a dare. I will still carry a badge, a headset, a roll of stickers that stick harder than oaths. For a few hours at a time, I choreograph impatience into departures. For a few hours at a time, I remember which promises belong to us and which can taxi away. At boarding, we say it. We leave the lamp on or off as needed. And when a door closes on a fuselage of strangers, and I hear the thunk echo in my teeth, I breathe, I lift my hand, and I tell metal gently to go.